Arirang Special.
An unusually heavy snowfall in Seoul. A special restricted area similar to the DMZ also exists in the heart of the city. It does not appear on any maps. But it's said that there lies a wondrous natural scenery. With visions of fluttering butterflies and dazzling flowers, we attempted to enter this place. Winter passed, the year changed, and spring came. And finally, the secret garden that we thought we'd never be able to enter opened its doors. Chong Wa Dae is at 1 Sejongno, Jongno-gu, Seoul. As soon as the gates opened, a scene of cherry blossoms swaying in the wind unfolded before us. In a hurry, we first headed to the environmentally friendly area. What kind of creatures would we see here? Waiting patiently under dry leaves for spring to arrive. The moisture brought by spring dampens the forest. Plants awake from their deep sleep. The mushroom's leathery surface swells as it sucks in moisture. Its thin spore sac reveals itself. When the sac becomes full, it will release spores into the air through a hole at the top. After setting itself upright, the puffball waits for spring rain. The spores will settle down on leaves and begin to grow 2 months later. For the first time, the garden of Cheongwadae is revealed to the public. Animals and plants have cleverly adapted to their secluded environment. Cheongwadae lies to the south of Bugak Mountain. Both the reception room and the presidential office are housed in a Hanok-style building that blends in with nature. The roof is covered with about 150,000 blue kiwa tiles that were baked carefully to make them last for centuries. The garden is located to the east of the main building. It's where the residence of the Japanese government general used to be during the colonial period. After Korea gained independence, Seungman Rhee used the house as his personal office. Then in 1993, the building was torn down as part of a movement to banish the vestige of the colonial times. A 730-year-old tree stands in this spot as a witness to the turbulent history of Korea. Nokjiwon is the main garden of Cheongwadae. Over 120 trees, including a 160-year-old umbrella pine, were planted in this man-made garden. The umbrella pine tree has branches that spread out sideways. A turtle dove has made a nest on one of its branches. This is where the secret garden begins. It is also a part of the large ecosystem of Bugak Mountain. Sangchunjae is the only wooden structure in the premises. It was the private residence of the Japanese government general and rebuilt into a concrete structure. In 1980, Sangchunjae was restored to its original Hanok architecture. Today, foreign dignitaries are received here. For the first time in 1993, Chong Wa Dae partially opened its compound and adjacent roads to the public. It marked a departure from authoritarianism. Visitors at Cheongwadae are immediately drawn to the Sika Deer roaming the grounds. In America, the public shows a keen interest in the family pets of the newly elected president. In Korea, the president has a royal animal that is more attuned to the natural environment. At Cheongwadae, the Sika Deer is free to graze on the grass. It especially likes lily turf. Korea's dynastic kings believed that the energy of mountains and streams could foretell the destiny of the royal family. Based on these beliefs, they searched for the ideal place where man and nature could live in harmony. The site of Cheongwadae was already considered auspicious for a royal palace some 500 years ago. But Bugak Mountain, which stands behind Cheongwadae, is a granite mountain with a topsoil that does not absorb water well. Thus, it is difficult for trees to take root. Only pine trees grow here. So the garden and naturally looking landscape of Cheongwadae have been man-made. Korea's success in planting billions of trees on barren mountains has been replicated at Cheongwadae. Presidents have also set an example. Former President Kim Dae-jung had the Rose of Sharon planted in front of Yongbin-gwan. Before him, Park Chung-hee planted juniper trees. Kim Young-sam brought in cornelian cherry trees. President Lee Myung-bak personally planted pine trees near Nokjiwon. Ever since former President Kim Yong-sam made a point of planting indigenous flowers, several more gardens were added. And the plants that grow there act like the seeds of life. Spring is nearly over, and summer is approaching fast. Aphids are unwanted guests in the garden. They are pests that feed on the leaves and stems. Defenseless against natural enemies, they choose a symbiotic relationship with ants. Ants surround an aphid larva and lick it with their feelers. This is how they raise and protect the larva. A ladybug, an aphid's natural enemy, appears. The ants raise their bottoms as a warning. Together, they chase away the ladybug. There is a reward given to the ants for defending the aphids. While feeding on plants, aphids will expel waste called honeydew, which the ants feed on. By protecting the aphids from the ladybug, the ants are rewarded with sweet honeydew. Nokjiwon is the main garden that leads to a forest. Dividing the garden and the wooded area is a brook. Also man-made since there is little water in the area. Birds drink and bathe in the flowing water. It is said that former First Lady Lee Hui-ho cherished the minnows, dark chubs, and carps that live in the brook. Chinese minnows inhabit narrow mountainous streams. They only live in pristine water. Swimming in schools underneath the shade of willow branches, the minnows have a ravenous appetite. At night, they hide in dark crevices. While they are omnivores, minnows prefer to eat insects that fall into the water. A drop of night dew can be deadly to an insect perched over the water. As the royal animal, the Sika deer is carefully protected. These spotted deers that also appear in Goguryeo tomb murals disappeared completely in South Korea in the early 1950s. Only a few remain in the wild in North Korea. In early July, the pregnant deer gave birth in the restricted hilly section of Cheongwadae. The handler of the deer guided us to the doe. A female doe becomes very uneasy before and after giving birth. She is more than wary of the camera crew. She sends her warning, then attacks. Motherly instincts stop her. Hearing the cries of its fawn, the doe returns to its offspring. The baby, hidden in the grass, can hardly support itself. The mother licks its newborn baby dry. During the mating season, visitors at Chong Wa Dae must take a detour if they find a Sika deer nearby. A fawn can walk 30 minutes after it is born and begin suckling milk. This is the third fawn to be born this year. That brings the total number of deers to 11. Efforts are being made to introduce the Sika deer to Korea again. And at the forefront of these efforts is Cheongwadae. Bugak Mountain acts as a natural fortress surrounding Cheongwadae. Behind it is Seoul Fortress and the DMZ, which is closed off with barbed wire. This area was off limits to the public for 60 years. The military fort is the first line of defense against any threats to Cheongwadae. With great difficulty, we were permitted into the area. Accompanied by a wildlife expert, we explored the place. Trudging along a narrow path, we stumbled upon an oak tree forest. Footprints of a badger.
과거에 있었는 게 고립이 된 거죠. 여기에. 이 지역이 사람 민간인 출입이 없기 때문에 오소리가 살기는 좋은 곳인데 전체 면적이 물론 넓지는 않죠.
A secret garden that forbade entry for decades.
잠깐만.
We stumbled upon a herd of 25 wild Sika deer. They were released in Bugak Mountain to replenish their numbers. Guided by their natural instincts, they've adapted to living in the mountain. we discovered a pair of brown hawk owls, which are designated as a natural monument in Korea. They have taken over an abandoned magpie nest. Brown hawk owls are migratory birds that mate for life. As birds of prey, they hunt at night. During the day, the Sika Deer rule the grounds of Cheongwadae, while at night, the brown hawk owls assume the mantle. Perched on a pine tree, they wait for nightfall. The lights never go out in the city, but the area around Cheongwadae is strictly controlled. In the silence of the night, the male brown hawk owl hunts in the forest. Its eyes scan for prey. Although it failed on its first attempt, it keeps watching the ground. Another missed opportunity. The tussa moth escaped well. The male dusts off the powder of the moth and gives it to its mate. The chicks chirp loudly for food. Both the male and the female go hunting. This pair of owls gave birth to 2 chicks in the summer. They mostly feed on insects such as moths, cicadas, and dragonflies. Geared with the hunting skills of hawks and owls, they can identify an insect from 15 meters in the pitch dark, hover in the air, and dive vertically. The chicks learn to use their claws when eating. They are preparing for the day when they'll leave their nest. When that time nears, they will start training their necks. Since owls have eyes on the front of their face, they have a narrow field of vision. This is overcome with their ability to turn their necks in a nearly full circle. We visited Chong Wa Dae again during the monsoon season in July. The city was at a standstill due to the gusty winds and stormy weather. We entered the secret garden once more. The streaks of rain seemed serene, but all the summer rain was transforming the forest. Topsoil and seeds are swept away by the pouring rain. This regular cycle shuffles the order of the plants and insects in the ecosystem every summer. A high-speed camera catches the individual raindrops. Rain is vital to the cycle of nature, but it can also be destructive. The rains end near the end of July, which is when hordes of cicadas appear. Korean blockish cicada nymphs emerge from the ground. With only a month to live, the females mate and lay eggs before they die. The eggs will take a year to hatch, after which the cicada nymphs will live underground for 4 years. It is marvelous to behold swarms of nymphs emerging all at once. This also makes it easier for males and females to mate. Crawling awkwardly, they climb up the trunks of trees. They have the uncanny ability to find the tree where they first hatched. A female cicada will lay about 200 eggs in a sack. The nymphs climb up the trees and suck the tree sap until they turn into adults. they begin to molt. This is when the cicadas shed their skin by tearing a slit down their back. The shaking movement is a natural instinct to pump out fluid stored in their bellies. Olympic Road, Namsan, Cheongwadae. Cicadas appear everywhere in Seoul. The adult cicada that emerges is covered in gold-colored powder. It hangs on a branch for an hour to let its wings stiffen and then fly off. Temperatures rise between the rains. Typhoons and hot, humid weather alternate. As the heavy rains abate, a record heat wave hits the city for 10 days. The mating season for cicadas is in full swing. And the deer find it hard to stay awake. To stay cool in hot August, they rest under the shade deep in the forest. As the air becomes cooler, flowers bloom in Cheongwadae's garden. They emit a sweet scent to attract bees and insects. Sitting on a Korean starwort, this Asian comma sucks nectar. Hovering in midair, the hummingbird hawk moth sticks its long antennae into a flower. There's an unwelcome guest in the pine tree forest. It's the oak nut weevil, which keeps the number of acorns in check. Standing upright, the male weevil stimulates the female with its front legs. It's courting the female. Unlike most insects, the male weevil has to wait for the female's permission to mate. After a female weevil mates, it will choose a fat acorn and mark the branch it is on. Then it will lay eggs on the acorn and cut off the branch. The acorn with the eggs attached to it has to fall on soil. That way the larva will be able to feed on the acorn. If the branch falls on asphalt, the acorn will shrivel and die. This Korean red squirrel runs to the nut pine forest behind Yeongpung Gate. It knows which nuts are good. But to eat the nuts, it must drop them first. It will pick up the fallen nuts and climb up the tree again to eat them safely. The little squirrel needs to fatten up now in preparation for the long winter. Trees use complex methods to scatter their seeds as far as possible. For they need to avoid competing with their own seeds. When plants grow close to each other, they must compete for sunlight and nutrients. That is why trees and plants used fine-tuned strategies to scatter their seeds. The Amur maple, which grows near rivers and streams, has seeds shaped like a propeller to keep them aloft in the air longer. The ailanthus, too, has seeds shaped like propellers with a bulge in the middle. These seeds will only sprout when they land on moist and nutrient-rich leaves or soil. A floral incubator for insects and a man-made landscape that merges with a natural forest rich in resources. The secret garden toils to give new life. Small violets bloom in front of Chong Wa Dae's main building. It is getting ready to scatter its seeds before its neighboring plants. After basking in the sun, the violet fruit will spread out like petals, causing a pressure to build up inside. The tiny seeds shoot out, traveling from 2 to 5 meters. This Cranesbill, which is believed to cure dysentery, has a more elaborate seed-launching mechanism. Its outer shell will roll itself to launch the seeds like a spring. The unique ecosystem of Chong Wa Dae cannot be seen in any other presidential palaces in the world. Although its secret garden is not visited by fairies, the place has set an example to support environmentally friendly policies. Following the changing seasons, the Forbidden Garden also undergoes transformations, and its scenery returns to the way it looked on our first visit. It's another day of heavy snow in Seoul. Just as the water flows downstream and 4 seasons come every year, this secret garden also abides by the rules of nature.